Before we dive in, please subscribe to the channel and make sure to watch this video until the very end for some incredible insights. You won't want to miss this.
3 weeks after my daughter's wedding, the photographer whispered, "Sir, you need to see this alone." I remember the exact sound of his voice. Not loud. Not panicked. Just, careful. The kind of careful that makes your stomach tighten before your mind understands why. Before we continue, if you're new here, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments that I share stories about family, loyalty, betrayal, and the moments that change everything. And trust me, you'll want to stay until the end of this one. Because what I discovered that morning didn't just shake my family. It dismantled it. My name is Daniel Harper. I'm 65 years old. I've buried a wife. Built a business. Raised 2 children. And until that phone call, I thought I understood my family. The wedding had been perfect. That's what everyone said. Perfect weather. Perfect venue. Perfect dress. Perfect smiles. My daughter, Emily, looked radiant walking down the aisle. White silk, lace sleeves, the same pearl earrings her mother wore on our wedding day. I remember thinking Margaret would have been proud. She would have cried. She always cried at weddings, even in commercials. I didn't cry. I just stood there, hands folded, watching my little girl promise her life to a man I had spent the past year trying to convince myself I trusted. His name is Caleb. Charming. Confident. Successful. Too confident, maybe. But that's hindsight talking. At the time, I shook his hand firmly and said, "Take care of her." And he smiled, that smooth, reassuring smile, and said, "Always, sir. Always." Funny how quickly that word can rot. 3 weeks later, I was sitting at my kitchen table at 8:12 in the morning. Black coffee. No sugar. Same chipped mug I've used for 15 years. The house was quiet, too quiet since Margaret passed 2 years ago. Emily and Caleb had moved into a townhouse across the city after the honeymoon. They'd insisted on independence. I respected that. The phone buzzed against the wooden table. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. At my age, unknown numbers usually mean extended warranties or medical alarms I don't need. But something made me answer. Daniel Harper. Silence. Then a soft inhale. "Mr. Harper, this is Thomas Reed. I photographed your daughter's wedding." I relaxed slightly. "Yes, Thomas. The pictures were beautiful." Another pause. "Too long." "Yes, sir. That's actually why I'm calling." My fingers tightened around the mug. "Is there a problem?" I noticed something while editing the photos. Something I didn't catch that day. I went back through the raw files twice just to make sure. My heart began beating differently. Not faster. Heavier. "What did you notice?" I asked. "Sir. I don't feel comfortable explaining it over the phone." The room felt smaller. "Then explain it anyway." Another inhale. "I think you should come to my studio. Alone. And please, don't mention this to your daughter yet." The coffee suddenly tasted bitter. "Why?" I asked. Because when someone tells a father not to mention something to his daughter, that word alone changes shape. Because, he said quietly, what I found, could change things. Change what? My mind raced through possibilities. A wardrobe malfunction. An embarrassing moment. Some awkward background expression. But his tone didn't match embarrassment. It matched dread. "Mr. Harper," he added, softer now, "if I were you, I would want to see this in person." That sentence did it. There are certain phrases that don't need explanation. "If I were you." That means danger. "I'll be there," I said. "Today?" he asked quickly. Yes. 10 o'clock. I'll lock the studio. He hung up. Just like that. No explanation. No reassurance. Just silence. I sat there for a full minute. The clock ticked. A car passed outside. A bird hit the gutter and startled me more than it should have. I told myself not to overreact. It was probably nothing. Probably a misunderstanding. Probably some awkward angle that made something look worse than it was. But something deep in my chest, something older than logic, was already whispering that this wasn't nothing. I stood slowly and walked down the hallway to my office. The walls are lined with framed photos. Margaret. Emily at 5 with missing teeth. My son Aaron at his high school graduation. Our family vacations. And there, centered on the largest wall. The wedding portrait. Emily and Caleb. Smiling. Holding hands. Perfect. I stared at Caleb's face. Trying to see something I had missed. His hand rested at the small of her back. Protective. Possessive. Or maybe that's just how I see it now. At the time, I saw a groom proud of his bride. Now. I wasn't sure what I was looking at. At 9:32, my phone buzzed again. Emily. Morning, Dad, she chirped. Her voice always does that thing to me, makes me stand a little straighter. Morning, sweetheart. You okay? You sound weird. I'm fine. Lie. Calm. Steady. Neutral. I've negotiated million-dollar contracts. I can manage a phone call. Caleb and I are coming by Sunday, she said. We wanted to show you something. Something? Yeah. Surprise. Surprise. I swallowed. That sounds good. She hesitated. Dad, are you sure you're okay? There's something about daughters. They can hear tension through silence. I'm fine, Em, I said. Just thinking. About what? I glanced at the wedding photo again. About how fast things change. She laughed softly. That's life, Dad. Yes. It is. At 9:55, I parked outside Thomas Reed's photography studio downtown. Brick building. Frosted glass windows. Quiet street. He was waiting inside. When I walked in, he locked the door behind me. That was the second moment my stomach tightened. The first was the phone call. The second was that lock clicking shut. He didn't offer coffee. He didn't make small talk. He walked straight to the editing room. Large monitor. Dim lights. Silence heavy in the air. Mr. Harper, he said carefully, I want you to know I debated calling you. Why? Because sometimes ignorance is kinder. My chest felt hollow. Show me, I said. He nodded. Clicked the mouse. The wedding slideshow began. The ceremony. The vows. The first kiss. Applause. Nothing unusual. Then he stopped it. Zoomed into a different folder. Raw captures. Pre-ceremony. Emily wasn't in these. Just guests arriving. Groomsmen. Caleb adjusting his tie. Laughing. Relaxed. Thomas zoomed in. Caleb standing near the side entrance of the venue. Talking to someone out of frame. Look here, Thomas said quietly. He clicked the next image. The angle shifted. And the frame widened. A woman stepped into view. Red dress. Blonde hair. Too close. Too intimate. Her hand on Caleb's chest. His hand, not pushing her away. The next photo. They weren't just talking. They were pressed together. His forehead against hers. Eyes closed. The next frame. His mouth on hers. Not a friendly kiss. Not a goodbye. A practiced kiss. A familiar kiss. And the timestamp? 42 minutes before my daughter walked down the aisle. The room went silent. No dramatic music. No shouting. Just the faint hum of the computer. Is that, my voice barely formed. Yes, Thomas said. That's Caleb. And the woman? I cross-referenced the guest list. He clicked again. Name, Olivia Grant. +1. +1. The word felt like an insult. She left before the ceremony, Thomas added. No one noticed. Or if they did, they didn't say. I couldn't blink. My mind replayed the vows. I choose you. The smile. The ring. 42 minutes earlier. He chose someone else. My daughter. My little girl. Walking toward a man who had already betrayed her. And I stood there. Smiling. Clapping. Proud. Because I didn't know. Thomas muted the screen. I'm sorry, he said. But I wasn't hearing him. I was hearing Caleb's voice. Always, sir. Always. I swallowed hard. Does Emily know? No, Thomas said. I delivered the edited album without these frames. I wasn't sure what to do. But then I kept thinking, if it were my daughter. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. I stared at the frozen image of Caleb kissing another woman hours before marrying my child. And something inside me changed. Not exploded. Changed. There's a difference. Anger is loud. Resolve is quiet. And in that dim editing room, resolve settled into my bones like cold steel. Send me every raw file, I said. Thomas nodded. There's more, he added carefully. More. That word again. What do you mean more? He hesitated. Scroll down, he whispered. I leaned forward. Clicked. And what I saw next made the kiss look small. I didn't realize my hand was shaking until the cursor slipped. The screen flickered slightly as I steadied the mouse. Thomas didn't speak. He just stood beside me, quiet, letting me move at my own pace. There's something about silence in moments like that. It stretches. It presses. It forces you to fill it with truth. I scrolled down. Another sequence of raw images loaded. Same side entrance. Same red dress. Same man my daughter had just married. But the posture was different now. The first photo showed Caleb looking over his shoulder, not nervous, not guilty. Careful. The next frame caught Olivia stepping closer again. Her hand slipped into his jacket pocket. He didn't resist. He smiled. Not the wedding smile. Not the polished, public smile. This one was private. Intimate. And then came the frame that made my chest feel hollow. Caleb handing her something. Small. Rectangular. She looked down at it and laughed. The timestamp read 2:18 p.m. The ceremony began at 3 o'clock. Thomas leaned forward slightly. I zoomed in, he said quietly. He clicked again. The image enlarged. It wasn't money. It wasn't a note. It was a key. A single brass key with a black fob. I recognized that fob. I had seen it clipped to Caleb's car keys more than once. I felt something colder than anger move through me. Go back, I said. Thomas clicked to the next frame. Olivia slipped the key into her purse. Caleb pulled her closer. Another kiss. Longer this time. More deliberate. The kind that doesn't belong in a parking lot 40 minutes before a wedding. And then. The final frame. Caleb stepping away, adjusting his jacket. Checking his reflection in the glass. Composed. Ready. Like nothing had happened. Like he was about to walk into a church and promise eternity. My mouth felt dry. Is that all? I asked. Thomas hesitated again. No. He clicked one last image. This one was taken from farther back. Wider lens. More background visible. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. But then my eyes adjusted. The angle captured more of the parking lot. 2 cars. One was Caleb's silver sedan. The other. A black SUV. License plate partially visible. And standing beside it. My son. Aaron. My chest stopped moving for a second. Aaron wasn't supposed to be there that early. He'd told me he was running late that day. Traffic. Work emergency. I remembered because I'd been annoyed. He'd barely made it to the ceremony on time. But here. In this frame. He was clearly there. At 2:19 p.m. Standing 10 feet away. Watching. Not shocked. Not confused. Watching. Thomas zoomed in. Aaron's arms were crossed. Expression unreadable. But he wasn't intervening. He wasn't turning away. He wasn't surprised. He was waiting. The next frame showed Aaron stepping forward. Caleb handed him something. An envelope. Aaron slid it into his jacket pocket. They shook hands. Then Aaron walked toward the main entrance. Olivia drove away. Caleb straightened his tie. And 40 minutes later, he married my daughter. The room felt smaller now. Thicker. Thomas exhaled slowly. I didn't know if I should include this part, he said carefully. You did the right thing. My voice didn't sound like mine. Aaron. My son. Emily's older brother. Complicit. That's the word that formed in my mind. Not surprised. Not betrayed. Complicit. I stood up slowly. Walked a few steps away from the screen. My legs felt heavier than they should have. The image replayed in my head. The envelope. The handshake. The key. The kiss. All before vows were spoken. All before my daughter stepped into a room full of people who believed in forever. Did anyone else see this? I asked. No, Thomas said. These were taken from the second camera positioned near the catering entrance. Most of the guests were inside already. No one was paying attention. No one. Except my son. I closed my eyes for a moment. Aaron had always been protective of Emily. When they were kids, he'd walk her to the bus stop. In college, he'd interrogate her boyfriends. He once threatened a kid for making her cry. And now. He stood 10 feet away while Caleb kissed another woman. And took an envelope from him. The meaning of that envelope felt heavier than the kiss itself. Money. Favors. Silence. I turned back toward the monitor. Email me everything, I said. I already prepared the file, Thomas replied quietly. Unedited. Metadata intact. Good. I needed timestamps. Proof. Not accusations. Facts. Thomas hesitated again. Mr. Harper. I'm sorry. I nodded. It's not your apology to make. When I stepped outside, the cold November air hit my face harder than expected. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, letting the city noise wash over me. People walking. Cars passing. Someone laughing across the street. Normal life. completely unaware that mine had just tilted. I didn't call Emily. I didn't call Aaron. I didn't call Caleb. Some truths require distance before confrontation. I drove home in silence. No radio. No phone. Just the steady hum of tires on asphalt and the replay of images in my mind. At 11:27 a.m., I sat back at my kitchen table. Laptop open. Raw files downloaded. I went through them again. Every frame. Every timestamp. Zooming in. Zooming out. Looking for something, anything, that would make this less damning. There wasn't. The envelope exchange was clear. The key transfer was clear. The kiss was unmistakable. And Aaron's presence? Undeniable. At 12:04 p.m., my phone buzzed. Aaron. My jaw tightened before I answered. Dad, he said casually. You busy? No. You sound weird. I forced my voice steady. Just tired. Listen, I wanted to ask you something. What? Did you transfer that final payment for the wedding venue yet? Caleb said he was covering part of it, but I think there was some confusion. Confusion. Interesting word choice. I'll check, I said. There was a pause. You okay? Aaron asked again. I'm fine. Another lie. But this one felt strategic. He cleared his throat. Dad, you trust Caleb, right? That question. So simple. So loaded. Why would you ask that? No reason. Just, you know. He's family now. Family. The word scraped against my nerves. Yes, I said slowly. He's family. There was relief in Aaron's exhale. Good. I just wanted to make sure everyone's on the same page. About what? About supporting them. Starting a life together. That kind of thing. Supporting them. I stared at the wedding photo still framed on the hallway wall. Tell me something, I said calmly. Were you at the venue before the ceremony? There was the slightest pause. I told you, Dad. I got stuck at work. Right. Silence stretched. You don't believe me? Aaron asked, defensive edge creeping in. I'm just clarifying. Another pause. Why are you asking? Because I saw you. Because I saw the envelope. Because I saw the handshake. Because I saw your sister's future collapse in 42 minutes. But I didn't say any of that. Just curious, I replied. Aaron laughed lightly. You're overthinking, Dad. Relax. Everything went perfectly. Perfectly. That word again. Yes, I said quietly. It did. When I hung up, the kitchen felt colder. Aaron had lied. Without hesitation. That bothered me more than Caleb's betrayal. Because Caleb was an outsider. Aaron wasn't. And if my son was protecting something. Or someone. Then this wasn't just infidelity. It was orchestration. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. Two possibilities formed in my mind. Either Aaron knew about Olivia and chose silence. Or he was involved in something larger. The envelope. The key. The early arrival. The lie. There was a pattern forming. And patterns don't lie. People do. At 1:16 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Emily. Dad. Are you home? Yes. Good. Caleb and I are stopping by in 20 minutes. My pulse shifted. Why? We have something exciting to tell you. Exciting. My stomach tightened. Okay. She lowered her voice. And Dad, promise me you'll be happy. Happy. I looked at the laptop screen still glowing on the kitchen table. At the frozen image of her husband kissing another woman. "I promise," I said. Because sometimes promises are about timing, not truth. She hung up cheerfully. And I sat there. Waiting. For my daughter. And the man who betrayed her. To walk into my house. With excitement in their eyes. And a lie in their pockets. At 1:37 p.m., I heard their car pull into the driveway. I didn't move immediately. I let the engine shut off. Let the doors close. Let their footsteps approach the front porch. There's something about waiting that sharpens your senses. The doorbell rang. Bright. Cheerful. Ordinary. I closed the laptop. Turned the screen toward the wall. And stood. When I opened the door, Emily stepped forward first. She hugged me tightly, arms wrapped around my chest like she used to when she was little. "I missed you," she said. "I saw you Sunday," I replied softly. "I still missed you." Caleb stood behind her. Perfect posture. Relaxed shoulders. Polished smile. "Afternoon, sir." Sir. That word hit differently now. "Come in," I said. They stepped inside like nothing in the world was wrong. Emily carried a large white envelope. Caleb's hand rested casually at her waist. The same hand I had watched press against another woman's back. 42 minutes before vows. They sat at the kitchen table. The same table where I had spent the last hour staring at proof. "Okay," Emily said, practically vibrating with excitement. "You go first." Caleb smiled at her. "No, you." She rolled her eyes playfully. "Fine." She slid the white envelope toward me. "Open it." My hands felt heavier than usual. But I kept them steady. Inside were architectural renderings. Modern. Clean lines. Glass panels. Steel accents. A house. A very expensive house. "Wow," I said quietly. Caleb leaned forward. "We put an offer down yesterday." "Yesterday." 3 weeks after the wedding. "Where?" I asked. "Westbrook Estates," Emily said proudly. "It's close to the lake." Westbrook. That development required substantial down payments. "How are you financing this?" I asked calmly. Caleb didn't hesitate. "Smart investing." "Investing. Interesting." Emily squeezed his arm. "We've been planning this for months." "Months. Before the wedding? Or after the key exchange?" "What's the down payment?" I asked. Emily looked at Caleb briefly. He answered. 200,000. 200. My chest felt hollow again. "Congratulations," I said evenly. Emily's face lit up. "Dad, this is our forever home." Forever. That word was getting tired. "And," she added breathlessly, "there's more." More. Again. She reached into her purse. Pulled out a small velvet box. And slid it toward me. Inside was a sonogram. The room tilted. "You're 8 weeks," she whispered. 8 weeks. 3 weeks after the wedding. Which meant. Before it. I felt my heartbeat move to my ears. Caleb's hand tightened around hers. "We wanted to tell you first," he said. First. The word tasted strange. "You're going to be a grandfather," Emily said, tears in her eyes. I looked at the image. A small blur. A life forming. Innocent. Unaware. And for a moment. Just a moment. Everything else faded. Because that child didn't deserve what was unfolding. That child didn't deserve secrets. Or betrayals. Or envelopes exchanged in parking lots. I swallowed. I'm happy for you, I said. And I meant it. Because joy and dread can exist in the same breath. Caleb leaned back, relaxed. We knew you'd be supportive. Supportive. Another word layered with expectation. I always support my children, I replied. He nodded approvingly. Good. Because we're going to need family close by. Family. Close. He was thinking ahead. Planning. I could see it now. The envelope wasn't random. The key wasn't sentimental. There was structure beneath this. A strategy. Emily reached for my hand. Dad, we want you involved. In what? In everything. The house. The baby. We want you close. Close. Close enough to trust. Close enough not to question. Close enough not to look too carefully. Caleb cleared his throat. There's one more thing. My eyes moved to him. He reached into his jacket pocket. Pulled out a folder. And slid it across the table. We're restructuring some finances, he said smoothly. Consolidating assets. It just makes sense with the baby coming. I didn't touch the folder yet. What kind of restructuring? Estate planning, he replied. You've always talked about legacy. This would streamline things. Streamline. That word is used by people who want something. He continued. We were thinking it might be wise to transfer certain properties into a family trust. Something that benefits everyone long term. Everyone. My stomach tightened. And which properties are you referring to? Caleb held my gaze. This house, for starters. There it was. The center of the chessboard. My house. The one Margaret and I built. The one my children grew up in. You want me to transfer ownership, I said calmly. Eventually, he replied. It would reduce inheritance taxes and secure the baby's future. Secure. Another polished word. Emily leaned forward. Dad, it's just paperwork. You'd still live here. Just paperwork. I remembered another envelope. Another handshake. Another quiet exchange before vows. I'll review it, I said. Caleb smiled. I knew you'd be reasonable. Reasonable. I had been reasonable my entire life. Reasonable enough not to question too loudly. Reasonable enough to give benefit of the doubt. Reasonable enough to miss what was right in front of me. They stayed for another 20 minutes. Talked about nursery colors. About lake views. About future barbecues. I listened. I nodded. I studied Caleb's posture. His confidence. The way he spoke about long-term financial planning like it was a done deal. Like I was already on board. Like the envelope in the parking lot was simply step one. When they stood to leave, Emily hugged me again. Thank you for being you, she whispered. Caleb shook my hand. Firm. Confident. You'll see, he said quietly. This is the right move. Right move. Chess language again. After they left, I didn't move for several minutes. The house felt heavier. The air thicker. I walked back to the kitchen table. Opened my laptop. Pulled up the image again. Caleb handing Olivia the key. Aaron taking the envelope. 2:18 p.m. 42 minutes before vows. And now. A $200,000 down payment. A proposal to transfer my house into a trust. And a baby on the way. I leaned back slowly. The pattern was clearer now. This wasn't impulsive betrayal. It was layered. Financial. Calculated. And Aaron. Aaron was part of it. The envelope. The lie. The reassurance call earlier. Everything went perfectly. Yes. It did. For them. I reached for my phone. Scrolled to one name. Margaret Collins. My attorney. Her office closed at 5 o'clock. It was 3:12. I dialed. She answered on the third ring. Daniel. Margaret, I said evenly. I need to see you tomorrow morning. Is everything all right? No. Pause. Is it about the wedding? Yes. Longer pause. I'll clear my schedule. Good. I looked at the wedding portrait still hanging on the hallway wall. Emily's smile. Caleb's hand at her back. 42 minutes after betrayal. Margaret, I added quietly. Yes. I think my son is involved. Silence on the other end. That complicates things, she said. Yes, I replied. It does. After I hung up, I walked to the hallway. Stood in front of the wedding photo. Studied Caleb's expression. There was confidence there. Not nerves. Not guilt. Confidence. The kind that comes from believing the board is already set. But here's the thing about chess. The quiet player rarely moves first. And I hadn't moved yet. Upstairs, I opened the safe in my bedroom closet. Inside were documents. Deeds. Trust agreements. Investment records. Not because I was paranoid. Because I was prepared. Margaret used to say I planned 3 moves ahead. She wasn't wrong. I took out the folder labeled Harper Family Trust. Placed it on the bed. Opened it slowly. And began to read. Because if Caleb wanted to play this game, he needed to understand something. The board didn't belong to him. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of anger. Anger burns hot and fades fast. What kept me awake was something colder. Calculation. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation from the last year. Every dinner. Every family meeting. Every time Caleb had leaned back in his chair and casually steered discussions toward money. At the time, I'd thought it was ambition. Now I saw structure. Ambition builds. Structure manipulates. There's a difference. At 6:14 a.m., I was already dressed. Gray suit. Navy tie. Polished shoes. I looked at myself in the mirror. 65 years old. Not fragile. Not confused. Not obsolete. And certainly not a burden. I locked the house behind me and drove downtown. Margaret Collins' office sat on the 12th floor of a quiet building overlooking the river. She'd handled my estate planning for nearly 2 decades. She understood silence. She understood timing. And most importantly, she understood paper trails. When I entered her office, she didn't waste time with pleasantries. She closed the door. Tell me everything. So I did. The photographer. The parking lot. The envelope. The key. Aaron. The down payment. The trust proposal. The pregnancy. I laid it all out, piece by piece, like documents on a table. Margaret didn't interrupt. She took notes. When I finished, the room was quiet. She folded her hands. You're certain about the timestamps? Yes. And you have the raw files? Yes. And the metadata hasn't been altered? No. She nodded slowly. Then we start with verification. Verification of what? Financial flows. She leaned forward slightly. If there was an envelope, there was a transaction. If there was a key, there was a property. If there's a $200,000 down payment 3 weeks after a wedding, there's a source. I exhaled. That's what I need. Margaret reached for her laptop. First question, did you contribute financially to the wedding? Yes. How much? 80,000. She didn't blink. And Caleb? He claimed he was covering vendor deposits directly. Did you verify? No. She gave me a look. Not judgment. Just acknowledgement. Let's start there, she said. Within 30 minutes, we were requesting documentation. Vendor invoices. Payment confirmations. Venue transfers. Margaret called in a forensic accountant she trusted. Discreet. Efficient. By 10:12 a.m., we had the first anomaly. The venue's deposit receipt. Paid in full. Not by Caleb. By a wire transfer from an account labeled Westbrook Holdings LLC. That's not Caleb's company, Margaret said. Not that I know of. She typed quickly. Pulled up public records. Westbrook Holdings was registered 6 months ago. Managing member. Aaron Harper. My son. The room felt colder. He created an LLC, Margaret said carefully. Yes. And used it to fund part of the wedding. Yes. And now Caleb is purchasing property in Westbrook Estates. The word Westbrook echoed. Not coincidence. Pattern. Margaret continued digging. Another payment surfaced. The catering advance. Also routed through Westbrook Holdings. And then. The most telling line item. A transfer of $175,000 from Westbrook Holdings to a personal account belonging to Caleb. Dated. 3 days before the wedding. I stared at the number. Why would Aaron transfer that kind of money to Caleb? Margaret didn't answer immediately. She didn't need to. Because we both knew. Investment. Leverage. Or purchase. Check the property records, I said. Margaret typed again. Westbrook Estates. Lot 47. Under contract. Buyer, Caleb Donovan. Seller, Westbrook Development Group. Parent company. Westbrook Holdings LLC. I sat back slowly. Aaron is the developer. Silent partner, Margaret replied. He bought land early. Resold at markup. And Caleb? Front buyer. The air in the room shifted. This isn't just infidelity, I said quietly. No, Margaret replied. It's coordination. The envelope. The handshake. The key. It wasn't emotional betrayal. It was transactional. Aaron funded the wedding. Structured the down payment. Positioned Caleb as the visible buyer. And likely. Planned to leverage my assets next. The trust proposal. Transfer this house. Consolidate assets. Streamline. It was all lining up. If my house entered their trust, it would become collateral. Equity. Liquid. Transferable. My silence would become their leverage. Margaret looked at me carefully. Daniel, this is more than family drama. I know. This is financial engineering. Yes. And your daughter? The question hung heavy. Emily doesn't know, I said. Margaret's expression softened slightly. And the pregnancy? Real. She nodded. That complicates timing. Yes. Because confrontation could fracture her marriage. Stress her pregnancy. Shatter illusions. But silence? Silence would allow them to proceed. And once assets moved, reversals become expensive. Messy. Public. I leaned forward. What's our move? Margaret closed her laptop. First, we protect your house. It's already protected. Yes. But we reinforce. She slid a document across the desk. Immediate trust restructuring. Irrevocable. With clauses preventing asset transfer without third-party approval. And the third party? Me. I nodded. Second, she continued, we freeze discretionary contributions. Meaning? No wedding reimbursements. No gifts. No down payment assistance. Of course. And third, she said carefully, we verify the envelope. How? Bank activity. She looked at me directly. If Aaron transferred funds to Caleb personally 3 days before the wedding, that envelope likely contained confirmation. Or leverage. Leverage? Yes. Something Caleb owes him. The word leverage made my jaw tighten. Meaning my son has something over my son-in-law. Possibly. And Olivia? Margaret paused. We don't know her role yet. But we would. By 12:43 p.m., the preliminary picture was clear. Aaron had positioned himself as silent financier. Caleb as front man. The wedding as public event. The pregnancy as emotional anchor. And the house. My house. As next target. I stood slowly. How long would it take them to execute transfer documents? If you sign voluntarily? Yes. Immediately. And if I refuse? Margaret's lips pressed slightly. They may escalate persuasion. Persuasion. Another polite word. Pressure. Emotional leverage. Family guilt. Daniel, she said carefully, you need to prepare for confrontation. I know. And you need to decide who you confront first. Aaron. Or Caleb. Or both. I walked to the window. Looked out at the river below. Margaret's voice was calm behind me. Remember something. What? They believe you don't see the board. I allowed myself the smallest smile. Good. She tilted her head slightly. Why good? Because when someone underestimates you. I turned toward her. They stop guarding their moves. That afternoon, I did something simple. I called Aaron. Dinner tonight, I said. Just us. There was a pause. Is something wrong? No. Another lie. I just want to celebrate becoming a grandfather. Relief in his voice. Of course, Dad. 7. I hung up. Then I sent a message to Caleb. Come by tomorrow evening. We need to finalize the trust discussion. He replied within seconds. Looking forward to it, sir. Sir. He still thought the board belonged to him. He still thought the envelope was invisible. He still thought I was thinking emotionally. But I wasn't. I was thinking legally. Strategically. And quietly. Because the quiet player doesn't move loudly. He moves precisely. That night, I laid out 2 envelopes on the dining table. One contained printed screenshots. The parking lot. The envelope exchange. The key. The timestamps. The second contained preliminary financial findings. Westbrook Holdings. Transfer confirmations. Property contracts. I didn't know which envelope I would open first. But I knew something else. When I looked Aaron in the eyes across that table, I would see truth. Because lies crack under direct light. And tonight, I was bringing the light. Aaron arrived at 6:58 p.m. He always did that, 2 minutes early, like punctuality was proof of integrity. I watched him through the living room window as he stepped out of his black SUV. Expensive vehicle. New. Paid for by what? Development profits? Silent partnerships? Or something more recent. He walked up the driveway with confidence. Shoulders squared. Phone in hand. When I opened the door, he smiled easily. "Smells like you cooked," he said. I did. Roast chicken. Mashed potatoes. Green beans. The same meal Margaret used to make on Sundays. He stepped inside like nothing in the world was fractured. Like he hadn't stood in a parking lot 3 weeks ago accepting an envelope from his sister's groom. We sat at the dining table. He complimented the food. Asked about my week. Talked about market trends. He spoke comfortably. Too comfortably. Which meant he didn't think I knew. And that told me something important. He believed the structure was secure. Halfway through dinner, I poured him another glass of wine. "Congratulations," I said. "For what?" "Becoming an uncle." He smiled. "Yeah. That was unexpected." "Unexpected. But not inconvenient." "Emily seems happy." "She is." "And Caleb?" Aaron hesitated just slightly. "He's ambitious." "Ambitious. That word again." "I like ambition," I said calmly. "Of course you do," he replied. "Do you?" He laughed lightly. "Dad, where's this going?" I cut my chicken slowly. "There was a moment at the wedding I wanted to ask you about." His fork paused. "Which moment?" "The 42 minutes before the ceremony." Silence. The clock ticked once. Twice. "I don't know what you mean," he said. I reached into my jacket pocket. Pulled out my phone. Opened the photo. Turned the screen toward him. The parking lot. The kiss. The envelope. Aaron didn't look shocked. He didn't look angry. He didn't look betrayed. He looked annoyed. "That's out of context," he said. Out of context. I swiped to the next frame. Zoomed in on him. Standing beside the SUV. Envelope in hand. "Is it?" His jaw tightened. "You had someone spy on the wedding?" "No." "So how?" "The photographer saw." That seemed to land. His eyes flicked briefly to the timestamp. He leaned back slowly. "So now what?" "Now what?" Not denial. Not apology. Strategy. "I want the truth," I said quietly. He stared at the image again. Then at me. "You don't understand the full picture." "Then help me." Long silence. Then he exhaled. "Caleb made a mistake. Before marrying your sister." "Yes." "And you knew." "Yes." The word was flat. Clean. Without guilt. "Why didn't you stop it?" Aaron's eyes hardened slightly. "Because it wasn't my decision to make." "She's your sister." And he was going to marry her anyway. The room felt smaller. "He told you that?" "Yes." "And the envelope?" Aaron leaned forward slightly. "That was between him and me." "No," I replied evenly. "It wasn't." His eyes sharpened. "You think this is about morality?" "I think it's about integrity." Aaron laughed softly. "Integrity doesn't build equity, Dad." There it was. The philosophy. The line dividing us. "Explain the envelope," I said. He hesitated. Then spoke. "Caleb needed liquidity to secure Westbrook Lot 47. Westbrook. So you financed him." "I structured the deal." "And the key?" "Temporary access." "For what?" "For valuation purposes." "Valuation of what?" "The development land adjacent to the property." The layers unfolded. "And Olivia?" Aaron's expression shifted slightly. She's a broker. A broker. Not a lover. A broker. She negotiates acquisitions quietly. Quietly. In red dresses? I asked. He didn't smile. Appearances are flexible. 42 minutes before vows. Flexible. And the kiss? Aaron's jaw tightened. That was personal. So he was negotiating land and kissing someone else before marrying your sister. It wasn't what it looked like. That's exactly what it looked like. He rubbed his temple briefly. Dad, you're reacting emotionally. No, I said quietly. I'm reacting structurally. His eyes narrowed slightly. You've been auditing. Yes. His lips pressed thin. Westbrook Holdings, I said. His silence confirmed it. $175,000 transfer 3 days before the wedding. He didn't deny. You financed the down payment. Yes. And now Caleb wants me to transfer this house into a trust. He leaned back again. That's smart planning. For who? For the family. The family, I repeated. Yes. And who defines family? Aaron's voice sharpened. Dad, don't do this. Do what? Make this adversarial. You already did. Silence fell heavily between us. Then he said something that told me everything. You don't understand scale. Scale. He was thinking larger than emotion. Larger than loyalty. What scale? I asked. Long-term development. Multi-property consolidation. Asset flow. We're positioning for growth. Positioning. Asset flow. He wasn't just participating. He was architecting. And Emily? She benefits. From deception. From equity. I stared at him. My daughter is not leverage. He held my gaze. She's secure. With a man who kisses brokers before vows. His eyes flickered slightly. That was a mistake. Whose? Caleb's. And you covered it. I protected the structure. There it was. Structure over sister. Profit over principle. And if I sign over this house? I asked calmly. It strengthens the portfolio. Portfolio, I repeated. Yes. And if I don't? Aaron's eyes hardened. It complicates things. Complicates. Not devastates. Not ends. Complicates. Meaning they'd planned for contingency. How? I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he said something colder. You always taught me to think 3 moves ahead. I let that settle. I also taught you loyalty. And you taught me not to be naive. That stung more than I expected. Is Emily aware? I asked. No. And the baby? She's pregnant. Not fragile. That sentence hung heavier than any lie. She deserves the truth. She deserves stability. Built on lies. Built on growth. He believed it. That was the part that unsettled me most. He truly believed the architecture justified the cracks. Tell me something, I said quietly. If the development fails? It won't. If it does? Aaron looked away for the first time. Then we restructure. And if that requires liquid assets? His eyes moved back to me. We adapt. Using what? Silence. My house. My equity. My lifetime of work. Adaptation. I leaned back slowly. You underestimated me, I said. He didn't flinch. No, he replied. We calculated. Calculated. Not assumed. Calculated. That word echoed. They hadn't thought I was weak. They thought I was predictable. There's a difference. And what did you calculate? I asked. That you'd choose family over friction. And if I choose principle? He held my gaze. Then we escalate. The word sat between us like a loaded weapon. Escalate how? I asked calmly. He didn't answer. But the silence told me enough. Pressure. Narrative control. Emotional leverage. Emily. The baby. I reached into the second envelope. Pulled out the printed bank confirmations. Placed them on the table. Westbrook Holdings, I said. Silent partner filings. His jaw tightened. You dug deep. Yes. He studied the documents. Then looked at me. You're going to fracture this family. No, I said quietly. You did. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Aaron stood slowly. You're making this harder than it needs to be. For who? For everyone. I stood as well. Especially you, he added. There it was. Not threat. Not apology. Prediction. You taught me something else, I said calmly. What? That quiet players win. He gave a faint, humorless smile. Only if they move correctly. I nodded. Then watch carefully. He left without finishing his wine. Without shaking my hand. Without saying goodnight. When the door closed, the house felt heavier. But clearer. The board was visible now. Aaron wasn't reckless. He was strategic. Caleb wasn't emotional. He was opportunistic. And Emily. Emily was the emotional shield protecting the structure. I walked to the hallway. Looked again at the wedding portrait. 42 minutes after a kiss. 42 minutes after a transaction. 42 minutes before vows. And tomorrow. Caleb would sit at this table. With trust documents. With ambition. With confidence. And he would think the conversation was about paperwork. It wasn't. It was about control. And for the first time in 3 weeks. They were no longer ahead of me. Caleb arrived at exactly 6:30 p.m. the next evening. Not early. Not late. Precise. That told me something. Aaron had spoken to him. They'd coordinated. When I opened the door, Caleb stepped in with the same composed energy he always carried. Evening, sir. Sir. The word sounded thinner now. Come in, I said. He carried a leather portfolio under his arm. Expensive. Minimal. Confident. We moved to the dining room. The same table where Aaron had sat less than 24 hours earlier. Same lighting. Same quiet air. Different opponent. Caleb didn't waste time. He opened the portfolio and spread documents across the table. Legal language. Trust restructuring. Asset consolidation. Intergenerational transfer clauses. Like I mentioned, he began smoothly, this is about protecting legacy. Legacy. That word again. Walk me through it, I said calmly. He nodded. Lot 47 in Westbrook Estates closes in 30 days. The market is shifting. We want liquidity positioned in a centralized trust structure before the baby arrives. Why before? Tax timing. He slid a pen toward me. This consolidates equity. From where? Your primary residence, primarily. And what does that accomplish? Leverage. He didn't hesitate. Leverage for what? Expansion. The honesty surprised me. He wasn't hiding the ambition. He assumed I would admire it. And if the expansion fails? It won't. I almost smiled. That's not an answer. Caleb leaned back slightly. Every move carries risk. And you're comfortable carrying mine? He met my eyes. Family supports growth. Growth. Such a polished word. Let's talk about the wedding, I said evenly. His expression didn't shift. What about it? 42 minutes before the ceremony. There it was. The flicker. Small. Controlled. But real. I don't follow. I reached into my jacket pocket. Placed my phone on the table. Opened the image. Turned it toward him. The parking lot. The kiss. The key. The timestamp. He didn't lunge. Didn't panic. Didn't deny. He stared at it. Longer than Aaron had. Then looked up. That wasn't what it looks like. I nodded slowly. It never is. He exhaled quietly. That was a business discussion. Involving lips. He didn't smile. Olivia negotiates aggressively. Aggressively. She negotiates with her mouth. He leaned forward. Mr. Harper, you're interpreting this emotionally. No, I replied calmly. I'm interpreting it structurally. He studied me carefully now. Different tone. More cautious. You hired someone to spy? No. Then how? The photographer. Silence. He looked at the timestamp again. And Aaron? I asked. Caleb's jaw tightened. He understands scale. That's not what I asked. He didn't answer. Which was answer enough. Tell me something, I said quietly. Did Emily know? His eyes flicked briefly. No. And now? No. And you intend to keep it that way? Yes. The honesty almost impressed me. Why? Because it doesn't serve the future. Future. Such a convenient excuse. She deserves truth. She deserves stability. The same language Aaron used. Scripted. Aligned. You two rehearsed that. He didn't deny. Let's talk about Westbrook Holdings, I said. His posture shifted slightly. That's Aaron's vehicle. Yes. And you received $175,000 from it 3 days before the wedding. It was a bridge. A bridge to what? Securing the lot. And the down payment? Coordinated. With my wedding contribution. His silence confirmed. You used my $80,000 as part of your liquidity presentation. He didn't argue. You layered it, I said. Personal funds on top of development capital. That's how portfolios scale. Portfolios. Scale. Growth. Everything but family. And my house? I asked. Stabilizing collateral. There it was. Clear. Clean. Cold. Collateral. He didn't flinch. Yes. And if I refuse? He leaned back. Then the structure adjusts. Adjusts how? He held my gaze. Liquidity shifts. To where? He didn't answer directly. Instead he said something revealing. Emily believes we're building security. And are you? Yes. At what cost? He didn't hesitate. Temporary opacity. Opacity. Another polished word. Temporary lies, I translated. He didn't argue. The room felt still. Heavy. You underestimated me, I said quietly. He didn't respond immediately. No, he said finally. We assumed alignment. Alignment. He thought I shared their values. He thought growth justified concealment. He thought structure outweighed sincerity. Alignment requires trust, I said. Yes. And trust requires transparency. He looked away briefly. Then back. We didn't think transparency was necessary. That was the moment. Not the kiss. Not the envelope. Not the LLC. That sentence. They didn't think I needed to know. They didn't think I needed to understand. They didn't think I would look. They didn't think I would move. I closed the folder slowly. Here's what's going to happen, I said calmly. He watched me carefully now. Less confident. More calculating. I've restructured my trust. His jaw tightened slightly. Effective this morning. He didn't speak. Asset transfers now require third-party approval. From who? My attorney. He held my gaze. You moved fast. Yes. And the house? Locked. And liquidity? Frozen. For the first time, I saw something close to frustration. You're destabilizing the portfolio, he said quietly. No, I replied. I'm stabilizing my integrity. He sat back slowly. You're risking Emily's future. No, I said evenly. You are. Silence. Long. Heavy. He studied the documents again. Then looked at me. What do you want? Truth. Accountability. Respect. But I didn't say those. I want you to understand something. What? You don't move pieces on my board. His eyes narrowed slightly. Your board? Yes. You think this is chess? No. It's family. He held my gaze. Family builds together. Family doesn't conceal. He stood slowly. This doesn't have to fracture. It already has. Not publicly. There it was. Concern. Not morality. Reputation. Public fracture would damage the structure. And what happens if Emily sees this? I asked. He didn't answer. Because that was the real risk. Not legality. Not liquidity. Exposure. He gathered the documents quietly. You're reacting impulsively. No, I replied calmly. I'm reacting deliberately. He paused at the door. If this collapses, he said quietly, everyone loses. Not everyone, I replied. He looked back. Who wins? The one who doesn't lie. Silence hung between us. Then he left. When the door closed, the house felt quiet. But not heavy this time. Clear. Focused. They had structure. They had scale. They had ambition. But they had one flaw. They assumed I wouldn't go further. They assumed I'd stop at protecting my house. They assumed I wouldn't look beyond the parking lot. But I had one question left. And it was the most dangerous one. Why did Olivia drive away before the ceremony? I didn't sleep again that night. But this time it wasn't calculation keeping me awake. It was curiosity. Because something didn't fit. If Olivia was just a broker. If the kiss was personal but irrelevant. If the envelope was merely liquidity confirmation. Then why did she leave before the ceremony? Why not stay? Why not blend into the crowd? Why disappear? At 6:02 a.m., I made coffee. Sat at the kitchen table. Opened the raw file again. Scrolled to the image of her SUV. Zoomed in on the license plate. Partial. But clear enough. I wrote it down. Then I called Margaret. Morning, she answered, already alert. I need vehicle registration. Send it. I did. She was quiet for a moment. Then. Give me an hour. At 7:11 a.m., my phone buzzed. Margaret. You're not going to like this. Tell me. The vehicle is registered to Olivia Grant. Yes. But the secondary insurance holder. She paused. Is Westbrook Holdings LLC. My chest tightened. So Aaron funds her. Yes. And she negotiates land for him. Yes. And she kisses Caleb. Silence. Daniel, Margaret said carefully, there's more. Of course there is. She's listed as an officer. Of Westbrook? Yes. Position? Chief Acquisition Strategist. I almost laughed. Strategist. So this wasn't a spontaneous kiss. It wasn't an affair of impulse. It was an alignment. A triangle. Aaron structured. Olivia acquired. Caleb executed. And Emily. Emily provided emotional legitimacy. The wedding wasn't just a union. It was optics. I leaned back slowly. Was Olivia ever connected to Caleb before Westbrook? I asked. Margaret paused again. Let me check corporate filings. Silence. Keyboard tapping. Then. Yes. My heartbeat shifted. 4 years ago, she was listed as managing agent on a limited property acquisition under Caleb's former startup. Before Emily. Yes. So they knew each other. Yes. And likely long before that. Silence. Patterns don't lie. People do. At 8:03 a.m., I made another call. This one wasn't to Margaret. It was to Thomas. The photographer. Mr. Harper, he answered. I need something else. Anything. Do you have footage? Video? Yes. There was ambient footage before and after ceremony. Why? Because I want to know where Olivia went. By 9:27 a.m., I was back in the studio. Thomas dimmed the lights. Loaded the backup footage. The camera angle was wide. Guests mingling. Caterers moving. Caleb near the side entrance. Olivia stepping back toward her SUV. But this time. We saw more. As she opened the car door, Aaron approached again. They spoke briefly. No kiss. No smile. Just direct eye contact. She handed him something. Small. Black. He slipped it into his pocket. Then she drove away. Pause, I said. Thomas froze the frame. Zoomed in. The object was rectangular. Thin. A flash drive. My stomach tightened. She handed him data, I said quietly. Thomas nodded slowly. Looks like it. Data. Not just money. Not just liquidity. Information. What happened next? I asked. Thomas resumed playback. Aaron watched her car leave. Then he looked around. And for the first time. He looked nervous. Not panicked. But alert. He scanned the area. Then slipped inside the venue. I checked the timestamp. 2:24 p.m. 36 minutes before vows. The flash drive. That changed the scale. Envelope plus flash drive. Liquidity plus data. And then. I remembered something. 3 days after the wedding, Aaron had come by my house unannounced. Said he needed to borrow my Wi-Fi because his home connection was unstable. He'd sat in my office for 45 minutes. Laptop open. Door closed. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now I saw structure. Thomas, I said quietly. Can you enhance the flash drive image? He tried. It wasn't crystal clear. But the casing had a small silver emblem. A logo. I recognized it. It belonged to a data storage firm Aaron once invested in. Encrypted enterprise backups. High security. Not casual files. Strategic files. I drove home in silence. Parked in my driveway. And walked straight to my office. The memory hit harder now. Aaron in my chair. Using my network. 3 days after receiving that flash drive. What had he uploaded? What had he copied? And why my house? Unless he needed access to something tied to my name. I opened my computer. Checked network logs. Margaret had insisted I install monitoring software years ago. Trust, but verify, she used to say. I pulled the history. 3 days after the wedding. Aaron's device had connected to my local trust server. Accessed estate planning folders. Downloaded archived financial statements. My stomach went cold. He hadn't borrowed Wi-Fi. He'd accessed valuation data. He'd downloaded my asset summaries. Which meant the trust proposal Caleb brought to the table wasn't hypothetical. It was calculated based on real numbers. My numbers. Without my permission. My phone buzzed. Emily. Dad, can we have lunch? My throat tightened. When? Now. I'm busy. Silence. You've been weird lately. I've been thinking. About what? You. She paused. What about me? Your future. She laughed softly. That's sweet. Sweet. If she only knew. Emily, I said carefully, do you trust Caleb? Yes. Without hesitation. Do you trust Aaron? Yes. Why? They protect me. Protect. I closed my eyes. They build around me. Yes. They did. And that was the problem. Dad, she asked softly. Yes. You're not going to do something dramatic, are you? Interesting question. Why would you ask that? Because Caleb said you seemed tense. Tense. So they were comparing notes. No, I said calmly. I'm just evaluating. Evaluating what? Growth. She laughed lightly. You sound like Aaron. That hurt more than she knew. After I hung up, I sat very still. The pieces were visible now. Caleb and Olivia had prior business alignment. Aaron structured Westbrook Holdings. The wedding financed liquidity layering. Olivia delivered encrypted data to Aaron. Aaron accessed my trust data. Caleb proposed asset consolidation. The pregnancy accelerated urgency. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an affair. This was acquisition. And my house was target. But here's what they hadn't calculated. I hadn't moved yet. Not publicly. Not decisively. And the flash drive. That was the crack. Because if they'd extracted my data, they'd left a trace. And if they'd left a trace, they'd underestimated the one thing I'd always been better at than emotion. Audit. At 3:41 p.m., Margaret called again. You're not going to like this either. Tell me. Westbrook Holdings has outstanding loans. How much? Just over 1.2 million. From who? Private lenders. Private. Not banks. Not regulated. And the maturity date? 30 days. 30. The same timeline as the property closing. Liquidity was tight. Structure was leveraged. And my house would have provided stability. Not growth. Stability. Collateral against private debt. And if I signed, my equity would backstop their exposure. I leaned back slowly. They're not expanding, I said quietly. They're covering. Yes. Margaret was silent for a moment. Daniel, if they can't close Westbrook in 30 days, they default. And private lenders don't restructure gently. No. They don't. Which meant pressure would increase. On me. On Emily. On timing. The pregnancy wasn't just emotional. It was leverage. I looked at the wedding portrait again. 42 minutes before vows. A kiss. An envelope. A flash drive. And now. 30 days before financial collapse. They thought I'd move emotionally. They thought I'd protect image. They thought I'd choose silence for Emily's sake. But here's what they didn't understand. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is timing. And I was done waiting. I picked up my phone. Dialed Aaron. He answered quickly. Yes. We need to talk again. Pause. About what? Debt. Long silence. How do you? Tonight. His voice sharpened. You're making a mistake. No, I said quietly. You did. Aaron didn't come alone. That told me everything. At 8:02 p.m., headlights swept across my living room wall. 2 vehicles. Aaron's SUV. And Caleb's sedan. They walked up the driveway together. Coordinated. Prepared. I didn't rush to the door. I let them knock once. Twice. On the third knock, I opened it. Neither smiled. Good. Masks were thinning. Dad, Aaron said evenly. Mr. Harper, Caleb added. Come in. We moved to the dining room again. Same table. Same light. Different air. Tighter. Caleb spoke first. What's this about debt? Direct. No pleasantries. Westbrook Holdings, I said calmly. Aaron's jaw flexed. You've been digging. Yes. How? Doesn't matter. It does. No, I replied quietly. What matters is you're leveraged. Silence. Caleb leaned back slightly. You're overstating. No, I said, sliding a document across the table. 1.2 million in private exposure. 30-day maturity. Aaron didn't touch the paper. He didn't need to. He knew it was accurate. You've accessed records you shouldn't have, he said tightly. You accessed mine first. His eyes flickered. For a second. Just a second. I saw something close to frustration. You went into my server, I continued calmly. 3 days after the wedding. Aaron's head lifted sharply. You monitored me? Yes. Silence fell heavy. You didn't have permission, he said. Neither did you. Caleb's voice cut in. This isn't productive. No. It was precise. You're closing Westbrook in 30 days, I said evenly. And if you fail, private lenders enforce. Aaron exhaled slowly. You don't understand how this works. Then explain. He leaned forward now. Liquidity is tight across the market. Short-term leverage is normal. Private leverage isn't normal. It's efficient. It's dangerous. It's opportunity. The words were sharp now. Stripped of polish. Opportunity for who? I asked. For all of us. By collateralizing my house. Aaron didn't respond. Caleb did. It would stabilize the portfolio. Portfolio, I repeated. Say family. He didn't. The silence stretched. Then Aaron said something that changed the tone completely. You think this is about greed? It isn't. No. What is it? It's scale. Scale. Again. You built one house, he said evenly. We're building communities. And you need my equity. To accelerate. And if I refuse? Aaron's voice lowered. You stall more than us. Explain. Westbrook employs contractors. Yes. Vendors. Yes. Investors. Yes. You collapse the structure. I didn't build it. But you can collapse it. There it was. Pressure through responsibility. Not just family. Community. Economics. Reputation. Private lenders won't just target us, Aaron continued quietly. They'll move through every layer. And you thought using my house would shield you. He didn't answer. Because that was exactly what they thought. Caleb shifted slightly. We didn't anticipate resistance. Resistance. Such a sterile word. You anticipated compliance. Yes. Honesty again. Cold. Clean. You underestimated me. No, Aaron said quietly. We underestimated timing. Timing. 30 days. They needed 30 days. They needed my signature before the maturity date. They needed consolidation before lenders reviewed exposure. They needed me predictable. And now. I wasn't. Does Emily know? I asked. Neither answered immediately. She doesn't need to, Caleb said finally. She's pregnant. And you think that shields her from truth? It protects her from stress. It protects you from accountability. Caleb's jaw tightened. You're weaponizing emotion. No, I said calmly. You did. Silence again. Heavy. Then Aaron said something colder. If this collapses publicly, Emily suffers. There it was. The blade. Not shouted. Not threatened. Just placed on the table. You're suggesting I stay silent. I'm suggesting you think about her. I am. Then don't destabilize this. I leaned back slowly. You built this house with your mother, Aaron said quietly. You told us it was legacy. Yes. Then let it become one. It already is. Not scalable. There it was again. Scale over sentiment. Structure over sincerity. You think in terms of acquisition, I said. You think in terms of survival, he replied. Private lenders don't forgive. No, I agreed. They don't. And if Westbrook collapses, Aaron continued quietly, it isn't just us. Then you shouldn't have leveraged privately. You taught me to take risks. I taught you to calculate. I am calculating. You're gambling. Silence. Caleb leaned forward. Let's be practical. Good, I replied. You need 1.2 million stabilized in 30 days. Yes. Your liquidity gap is approximately 400,000. Aaron's eyes flickered. Close. You plan to secure that through consolidated family trust. Yes. With my house as backing. Yes. And if I decline? Aaron's voice hardened. We liquidate elsewhere. Where? He didn't answer. Because there wasn't elsewhere. That was the point. The room felt smaller. Sharper. Then I did something unexpected. I smiled. Not wide. Not mocking. Just calm. You both made one critical error. Neither moved. What? You assumed the board was static. Aaron's eyes narrowed slightly. What does that mean? It means you assumed the only move left was mine. Silence. You're not the only ones with leverage, I said quietly. Caleb's posture shifted. Explain. I will, I replied. But first. I reached into my jacket. Placed a printed document on the table. What's this? Aaron asked. Formal notice. His jaw tightened. Notice of what? That Westbrook Holdings accessed proprietary financial data without authorization. The air shifted instantly. You wouldn't, Aaron said quietly. I already did. Caleb leaned forward sharply. To who? Your private lenders. Silence. Thick. Heavy. Aaron's face drained slightly. You involved them? Yes. You escalated. No, I said evenly. You forced transparency. Caleb's voice sharpened. That destabilizes negotiations. Yes. And you knew that. Yes. You're collapsing the structure. No, I said calmly. I'm revealing it. Aaron stood abruptly. You've just triggered enforcement. Then perhaps, I said quietly, you shouldn't have built it on opacity. His breathing was heavier now. Anger breaking through calculation. You think this doesn't touch Emily? I think lies already did. You're reckless. No, I replied. I'm precise. Caleb's voice lowered. Do you realize what private lenders do when they feel threatened? Yes. Then you've put us in danger. No, I said calmly. You did. Silence fell. Not argumentative now. Heavy. Real. 30 days. Now compressed. Because I'd moved. Aaron's eyes locked onto mine. You think you're protecting her? I am. You're destabilizing her marriage. It was unstable before vows. You're fracturing family. You already fractured trust. His voice dropped to something almost desperate. You don't understand what pressure feels like. I held his gaze. I built this house during a recession. Silence. I buried your mother and paid every debt myself. Silence. I understand pressure. Caleb gathered the papers quickly. You've made this adversarial. It already was. You could have worked with us. You could have told the truth. Neither spoke. Because we were past persuasion now. Past strategy. This was exposure. And exposure changes behavior. They moved toward the door. Aaron stopped briefly. If this blows back, he said quietly, it won't be clean. I met his eyes. Neither was the kiss. He flinched. Just slightly. Then they left. The house was silent again. But something had shifted. The structure wasn't stable anymore. The lenders would investigate. The audit would widen. And 30 days had just become immediate. Because once private capital smells risk, it moves fast. And the real question now wasn't whether Westbrook would close. It was whether Aaron and Caleb could survive enforcement. And whether Emily would still be shielded. When the structure started cracking. My phone buzzed. Margaret. It's begun, she said. What? The lenders responded. And? They're calling in review. I closed my eyes slowly. How long? 48 hours. 48. Not 30 days. 48 hours. The board had shifted. And now. There was no going back. 48 hours. Not 30 days. Not weeks. Not eventually. 2 days. That's how long it took for quiet leverage to turn into visible pressure. At 7:18 a.m. the next morning, my phone started vibrating. Not once. Not twice. Repeatedly. Unknown numbers. Blocked IDs. Voicemail notifications stacking. I didn't answer. I knew who it was. Private capital doesn't send letters first. It calls. Hard. Fast. Persistent. At 7:42 a.m., Margaret called. They're in active review. Meaning? They pulled the loan file. They're demanding collateral disclosure. Good. Have they contacted Aaron directly? Yes. And Caleb? Yes. And? Aaron's scrambling. I allowed myself one slow breath. Any movement on Westbrook Lot 47? Buyer verification flagged. That meant the title company had paused. No clean close. No quiet transfer. Liquidity frozen. 30 days just turned into uncertainty. At 8:03 a.m., Emily called. Her voice wasn't cheerful this time. Dad. Yes. Did you talk to Aaron last night? Yes. What did you do? I told the truth. Silence. He's furious. I know. Caleb's getting calls. I know. Her breathing was uneven. You involved lenders? Yes. Why? Because they were using my equity as invisible backing. They weren't. They were. Dad. Emily, I said gently but firmly, do you know about the $1.2 million in private leverage? Silence. No, she whispered. Did Caleb tell you? No. Did Aaron? No. The air between us changed. Dad, what are you saying? I'm saying your house wasn't funded by ambition. Silence. It was funded by exposure. Her breathing shifted again. You're wrong. I wish I was. She didn't hang up. But she didn't speak either. Finally. What does this mean? She asked. It means you deserve the full picture. There it was. The first crack. At 9:26 a.m., Caleb called. Not, sir. Not polite. Direct. What did you tell her? The truth. You're destabilizing her. No. I'm removing deception. You don't understand scale. Stop using that word. Silence. You've triggered acceleration, he said quietly. Of what? Enforcement. Good. You think this ends clean? No. Then why? Because silence would have ended worse. He didn't respond. Because he knew that was true. At 10:14 a.m., Aaron called. This time his voice wasn't calculated. It was tight. You blindsided lenders. You blindsided me. You forced a liquidity review. You forced opacity. They're calling capital early. I know. You realize what that means? Yes. It means we need cash. I know. And if we can't, you default. Silence. Then. You've just risked everything. No, I said quietly. You did when you leveraged privately. His voice cracked slightly. You could have given us time. You could have given me truth. Silence again. Heavy. Raw. For the first time, I heard something beyond strategy in his breathing. Fear. At 11:02 a.m., my front doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened it. Emily stood there. Alone. Her eyes were red. Not from crying. From processing. She stepped inside without asking. I need to see, she said quietly. See what? Everything. We walked to the dining table. I opened the laptop. Pulled up the images. The parking lot. The kiss. The envelope. The flash drive. She stared. Long. Silent. Her hand moved slowly to her mouth. He said it was nothing, she whispered. It wasn't nothing. She looked at the timestamp. 42 minutes. Her shoulders trembled slightly. And Aaron? I swiped to the next frame. Her brother. Standing there. Envelope in hand. Her breathing stopped for a moment. He told me he was late. I know. Tears came quietly. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just steady. I asked him to walk me down the aisle, she whispered. And he did. Yes. After watching this. Silence filled the room. Then she asked something that cut deeper than any accusation. Did you know before? No. She nodded slowly. I believed him. I know. I trusted him. I know. She wiped her face carefully. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I just learned. She nodded again. Then her voice hardened slightly. What else? There it was. Strength rising through hurt. I slid the financial documents across the table. Westbrook Holdings. Loan exposure. Maturity date. Her eyes scanned the numbers. Her hand rested instinctively on her stomach. They told me the house was secure, she whispered. It isn't. They said we were building. You were covering. Her jaw tightened. And the baby? The baby is real. She looked at me sharply. You think he used that? I think timing wasn't accidental. Silence. Her breathing steadied. Is there anything else I don't know? Yes. I told her about the trust proposal. Her face drained. He told me you were excited. I wasn't. He said you offered. I didn't. Her eyes hardened. And you involved lenders? Yes. She nodded slowly. You forced this. I forced transparency. She stared at the table for a long moment. Then she said something I hadn't expected. Good. The word landed quietly. But firmly. I don't want to live inside something I don't understand. Her voice steadied. I don't want my child built on leverage. The room felt different now. Not fractured. Aligned. You're not angry at me? I asked carefully. She looked up. You could have protected yourself and stayed silent. Yes. You didn't. No. She exhaled slowly. That's the difference. At 12:41 p.m., her phone buzzed. Aaron. She didn't answer. Then Caleb. She didn't answer. Then a third call. Unknown number. She glanced at me. Lender, I said quietly. She let it ring out. Silence returned. Then she looked at me again. What happens now? They have 48 hours. And if they can't produce collateral? They restructure. And if they can't? They lose Westbrook. And the private lenders? They enforce. Her hand tightened slightly on the table. And if that touches us? It won't. She held my gaze. You're sure? Yes. Why? Because I already moved the board. Her brow furrowed slightly. What does that mean? It means they thought my house was their backstop. And it isn't? No. She waited. So I told her. I transferred temporary holding control of my primary equity to an independent escrow trust yesterday. Her eyes widened slightly. So they can't access it? No. And lenders? They can't force it. And Caleb doesn't know? No. A small, quiet smile formed through her tears. He really did underestimate you. Yes. And Aaron? He calculated. She nodded slowly. Then she stood. I need to see them. Alone? Yes. You're sure? Yes. She wiped her face one last time. When you taught me chess, she said softly, you told me something. What? Never move in anger. I nodded. And I'm not angry. She walked toward the door. I'm precise. When the door closed behind her, the house felt quieter. But not empty. Aligned. The board had shifted again. Because now, the emotional shield had seen the structure. And that changes leverage. At 2:07 p.m., my phone buzzed. Margaret. It's accelerating. How? Private lenders are demanding emergency capital injection. How much? 500,000. I exhaled slowly. And if they can't? They begin enforcement. And Westbrook? Frozen. Silence. Then she asked. Daniel, are you prepared for collapse? I looked at the wedding portrait again. 42 minutes before vows. And everything since. Yes, I said quietly. Are they? At 4:16 p.m., my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Aaron. It wasn't Caleb. It wasn't Emily. It was a number I recognized. Private capital doesn't hide once exposure begins. Mr. Harper, the voice said smoothly, this is Victor Lang with Crestline Private Holdings. Of course it was. Private lenders always introduce themselves politely. Before they tighten the rope. Yes, I replied evenly. We understand you've raised certain disclosures regarding Westbrook Holdings. I have. We'd like to clarify your position. My position is simple, I said calmly. My assets are not collateral. Pause. Understood. That pause was an agreement. It was recalibration. We're conducting an internal review. As you should. Your son appears, overextended. Yes. Did you fund any portion of Westbrook Holdings? No. Are you aware of the current liquidity gap? Yes. And you have no intention of injecting capital? No. Silence. Longer this time. Understood, he repeated. But his tone had shifted. Less cordial. More cold. Thank you for your transparency. Click. That's how private capital moves. Fast. Clinical. And unforgiving. At 5:02 p.m., Emily called. Her voice was steady. Calmer than before. I saw them. Together? Yes. And? They were arguing when I walked in. Of course they were. About you? About liquidity. There it was. The word that matters. Did you confront them? Yes. And? Silence on her end. Then. I asked Caleb if he loved me. That question carries weight no contract can. And? I asked quietly. He said yes. And you believed him? Silence. I asked him if he loved the deal more. Long pause. He didn't answer. There it was. Not denial. Not reassurance. Silence. Which is answer enough. And Aaron? I asked. He said you destabilized the structure. She exhaled sharply. He used that word again. Yes. I asked him what happens if Westbrook collapses. And? He said it's unlikely. That's not an answer. That's what I said. Silence again. Then her voice changed slightly. Colder. And then I asked them about the kiss. My grip tightened slightly on the phone. And Caleb said it wasn't emotional. What was it? Strategic. There it was. No romance. No betrayal of passion. Strategic intimacy. My daughter went quiet again. I asked him what that meant. And he said Olivia handles high-pressure negotiations better when there's personal trust. Personal trust. I closed my eyes slowly. And I asked him, Emily continued, why that trust required lips. Silence on her end. Then he didn't answer. At 6:11 p.m., Aaron called me directly. No greeting. They've accelerated enforcement. I know. They're demanding immediate cash. I know. Do you understand what that means? Yes. It means Westbrook collapses if we don't inject. Yes. You forced this. No, I said evenly. You leveraged privately. You could have bridged. I'm not your bridge. You're destroying years of build. You built on opacity. Silence. Heavy. Then he said something that shifted the air. Do you know what private lenders do when they lose money? Yes. They don't forgive. I know. And they don't just pursue the company. There it was. The implied threat. They pursue exposure, I replied calmly. And I have none. He went quiet. Because that part was true. You think escrow protects you? Yes. You think independent trust structures stop pressure? Yes. Silence. You're wrong, he said quietly. No, I replied. I'm prepared. At 7:43 p.m., Caleb showed up at my door. Alone. He didn't knock politely this time. He knocked hard. Twice. I opened the door. He looked different. Not disheveled. Not panicked. But stripped of polish. They're calling in capital. I know. You could stop this. No. 500,000. I know. It's temporary. No. He stepped closer. You're punishing me. I'm protecting her. This hurts Emily. No, I said quietly. You did. His jaw tightened. You don't understand scale. Stop using that word. He exhaled sharply. You think this is about betrayal? It is. No. It's about survival. Then survive. Without you? Yes. Silence. Heavy. He studied me carefully. Then his voice lowered. You think you've won. I'm not playing to win. You are. No. I'm playing to stop. He looked away briefly. Then back. If this collapses publicly, lenders will investigate everything. Yes. They'll review Westbrook. Yes. They'll review associated acquisitions. Yes. They'll see my name. Yes. And they'll see Aaron. Yes. And they'll see Emily. I held his gaze. They'll see truth. He shook his head slightly. You're naive. No, I replied quietly. I'm done. At 9:12 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Margaret. It's formal. How bad? Crestline has filed preliminary enforcement motion. How fast? Within 72 hours. Collateral seizure. Yes. And Westbrook? Frozen. Silence. Then she said something that mattered. They're not just targeting Westbrook. What else? They've expanded review to associated personal guarantees. My chest tightened slightly. Whose? Aaron's. Of course. He signed personal exposure. Yes. For how much? 600,000. I closed my eyes. So Aaron wasn't just architect. He was exposed. Personally. He'd put himself on the line. Without telling Emily. Without telling me. At 10:04 p.m., there was another knock. Soft. Different. I opened the door. Emily. She stepped inside quietly. No tears now. No tremble. Just clarity. They signed personal guarantees, she said. Yes. They didn't tell me. No. She nodded slowly. They leveraged our house. Yes. And my name? Yes. She closed her eyes briefly. And the baby? Innocent. She exhaled slowly. I asked Caleb if he would sign over equity control to stabilize without my father. And? He said it wasn't viable. Meaning my house was the only viable backstop. There it was. Clear. Cold. Measured. He said you're emotional. She almost laughed. You're not. No. She looked at me carefully. They're collapsing. Yes. And you're not helping. No. Why? I held her gaze. Because helping would enable repetition. Silence. Then she nodded. You taught me something else. What? Never reward bad structure. I allowed myself the smallest smile. Your mother used to say that. She looked around the house slowly. This house is stable. Yes. Westbrook isn't. No. And that's not your fault. No. She nodded again. Then she said something that shifted the entire weight of the situation. I'm staying here. I blinked. For now. You don't have to. I know. Silence. Then she added quietly. I don't trust their structure. At midnight, the house was quiet again. But different. Not tense. Resolved. Because the collapse wasn't emotional. It was structural. And structure fails quietly at first. Then all at once. At 2:11 a.m., my phone vibrated again. Aaron. I let it ring. Then he texted. They're seizing. 30 seconds later. Another text. They're freezing accounts. Then. They're calling personal guarantees. Silence. Then. I didn't think you'd actually move. I stared at the screen. Then I typed one sentence. You miscalculated. The collapse wasn't loud. It was procedural. Paperwork. Freezes. Notices. Deadlines. And in 72 hours. Westbrook Holdings would no longer be theirs. And the question that remained wasn't about money. It was about aftermath. Because when structure collapses, so does ego. And ego fights back. By morning, the news had spread. Not publicly. Not in headlines. But through the quiet channels that matter most in private capital. Phone calls. Emails. Broker whispers. Westbrook Holdings was in active enforcement. And once that phrase begins circulating, confidence evaporates. At 7:38 a.m., Aaron showed up at my door again. This time alone. He didn't knock hard. He knocked once. Soft. Measured. When I opened it, he didn't step inside immediately. He just stood there. Shoulders lower. Eyes tired. They froze the accounts, he said quietly. I know. They're calling personal exposure. I know. They've contacted subcontractors. Yes. He exhaled slowly. I didn't think they'd move this fast. That's what private capital does. Silence. Then he said something that mattered. I thought I had more time. There it was. The miscalculation. Time. He thought 30 days meant flexibility. It meant vulnerability. They're restructuring the debt package, he continued. Yes. They're forcing asset disclosure. Yes. He looked at me carefully. They're asking about family collateral. And I told them there isn't any. Good. They don't believe me. They don't need to. Silence. He stepped inside finally. Closed the door behind him. They're threatening litigation. For what? For misrepresentation of liquidity. And did you misrepresent? He didn't answer. That silence said enough. We sat at the kitchen table. No documents this time. No folders. Just air between us. I wasn't trying to betray Emily, he said quietly. I know. You think I don't love her? I think you prioritize differently. He nodded slowly. I thought I was protecting her long term. By hiding risk short term. Yes. That's not protection. He rubbed his hands together. They're not just seizing Westbrook. What else? They're reviewing personal guarantees. I know. They're looking at everything. Yes. Silence. Then. They're asking about Olivia. There it was. She signed partial acquisition documents, he continued. She has exposure too. And Caleb? He's scrambling. Scrambling. Finally. Did he love her? I asked quietly. Aaron didn't look surprised. He knew who I meant. Olivia? Yes. No. Did she love him? No. Then why the kiss? He hesitated. Leverage. There it was again. Personal leverage increases negotiation compliance, he said. You taught me about leverage. I taught you about value. Silence. Then he said something unexpected. She wasn't supposed to be photographed. I held his gaze. You placed her there quietly. Yes. And you miscalculated visibility. Yes. Silence. 42 minutes, I said. He nodded. I know. At 9:14 a.m., Caleb called Aaron while he was sitting in my kitchen. Aaron put it on speaker without asking. Where are you? Caleb's voice was tight. At Dad's. Pause. Why? Because we need to recalibrate. Recalibrate? Caleb snapped. They're freezing personal exposure. I know. They're reviewing Olivia. I know. They're reviewing you. I know. You said we had control. We did. For 30 days. Silence. Then Caleb's voice lowered. She's staying at his house. I felt Aaron glance at me. Yes, he replied. She shouldn't be there. She chose to. Silence. She knows. Caleb asked quietly. Yes. Long silence. Then. You lost the emotional shield. I saw Aaron's jaw tighten. That's not how this works, he said. That's exactly how this works, Caleb shot back. No, Aaron replied evenly. That's how you thought it worked. Silence. Then Caleb said something colder. If this collapses, I won't go down alone. There it was. Fracture. Aaron's voice shifted. Are you threatening me? I'm protecting myself. Silence. Then the call ended. The room felt different after that. Not adversarial. Exposed. Because once partners start protecting themselves, structure disintegrates. You see it now, I said quietly. Aaron nodded slowly. It's unraveling. Yes. And you can't stop it. No. Silence. Then he asked something that told me he'd finally stepped outside strategy. What would you have done? If it were you? Yes. I didn't answer immediately. Then I said. I would have told her. He closed his eyes briefly. I thought I was smarter than emotion. No, I said quietly. You were smarter than honesty. At 11:22 a.m., Margaret called again. Crestline has initiated formal enforcement on Westbrook Holdings. How long? Immediate asset freeze. And personal guarantees. In review. And Olivia? Being deposed. Silence. Then she added. Caleb's name is now tied directly to acquisition misrepresentation. I closed my eyes slowly. How exposed? Significant. And Aaron? Less. Why? Because documentation shows Caleb as primary front. Front. Yes. Aaron structured. Caleb executed. But legally. Execution carries weight. At 1:03 p.m., Emily walked into the kitchen quietly. She looked at Aaron. He looked at her. Silence. Then she said something simple. Why didn't you tell me? Aaron didn't deflect. I thought I was protecting you. From what? Risk. She nodded slowly. You protected the deal. Silence. And you protected Caleb. Yes. And you didn't protect me. Silence. That silence was heavier than anger. He stood slowly. I'm sorry. She didn't cry. Didn't yell. Didn't collapse. She just nodded once. I know. That hurt more than rejection. Because, I know, means the apology is too late. By 4:47 p.m., the enforcement notice was public record. Not on television. But in filings. Westbrook Holdings, Asset Review. Private enforcement motion. Investors began pulling quietly. Subcontractors froze progress. Construction halted. And by sunset, Lot 47 was no longer under active development. It was under review. 30 days became 72 hours. 72 hours became collapse. At 7:18 p.m., Caleb arrived again. But this time, he didn't come inside. He stood on the driveway. Looking smaller. Less composed. Emily stepped outside to meet him. I watched from the doorway. Their conversation was low. Tight. Measured. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. But she didn't lean in either. There's a difference. After several minutes, he stepped back. She said something I couldn't hear. He nodded once. Then left. She stood in the driveway for a moment longer. Then came inside. He asked if I still trust him, she said quietly. And? I asked if he trusts himself. Silence. Then she added. He didn't answer. At 9:42 p.m., Aaron stood to leave. He paused at the door. I thought I was thinking ahead. You were. I thought I was building. You were. I didn't think I was gambling. You were. Silence. Then he asked something softer. Do you still trust me? I looked at him carefully. Yes. He blinked slightly. But not blindly. He nodded slowly. That's fair. By midnight, the house was quiet again. But the collapse wasn't chaotic. It was clean. Because once opacity is exposed, Structure fails fast. Westbrook was gone. Liquidity was frozen. Private lenders were repositioning. Olivia was under review. Caleb was exposed. And Aaron. Aaron had learned something more expensive than money. Scale without integrity collapses. Emily sat beside me in the living room. We stared at the wedding portrait. 42 minutes before vows. 42 minutes before leverage. 42 minutes before collapse. She reached up and took the frame down. Not violently. Not dramatically. Just carefully. Set it face down on the table. "I'm not ready to look at that yet," she said quietly. "That's okay." Silence settled. Not heavy. Not tense. Just clear. "You were right," she said softly. "No," I replied. I was patient. The collapse wasn't loud. There were no sirens. No headlines. No dramatic confrontations in courtrooms. Just paperwork. Emails. Account freezes. And quiet exits. Within a week, Westbrook Holdings was no longer active. Private lenders seized partial land assets. Subcontractors filed claims. Investors repositioned. And Caleb's name, once polished and rising, began appearing in places it never should have. Risk bulletins. Private capital advisories. Acquisition warnings. It didn't ruin him. But it marked him. And in private finance, marks matter. Aaron didn't come by for 3 days. Not because he was hiding. Because he was recalculating. When he finally returned, it wasn't with plans. It was with paperwork. He sat at my kitchen table again. No leather portfolio this time. Just loose documents. "I've liquidated my position," he said quietly. "In what?" "Everything." "Westbrook?" "Yes." "And?" "I absorbed the loss." "How much?" He didn't answer immediately. "Enough." Silence. "You signed personal guarantees," I said. "Yes." "And they enforced?" "Yes." "And you paid?" "Yes." "How?" "By selling." "Everything?" "Most." Silence. He looked older. Not physically. But structurally. There's something about losing a deal you built that changes posture. "You didn't have to cover Caleb," I said. He didn't respond right away. Then. "I did." "Why?" "Because I signed." That mattered. He hadn't run. He hadn't hidden. He absorbed. That was different. "And Olivia?" I asked. "Gone." "Where?" "Doesn't matter. She'll resurface." "Yes." "And Caleb?" Silence. "He's negotiating privately." "With who?" "New capital." "And you?" "I'm done." "Done with what?" "Scale." That word again. But softer now. "Done with private leverage." Silence. Then he looked at me carefully. I was wrong. Not defensive. Not strategic. Just clear. I thought I was thinking bigger. You were. I wasn't thinking deeper. There it was. Depth over scale. Finally. Emily moved into the guest room downstairs. Not dramatically. Not as a declaration. Just quietly. She and Caleb were taking space. That's what she called it. Taking space is different than breaking. It leaves room for repair. Or clarity. One evening, she sat across from me with her hands folded over her stomach. "He wants to fix it," she said. "Does he?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because he lost." Silence. That's not why you fix something, I said gently. She nodded slowly. I asked him something. What? If there were no deals, no development, no scale. Silence. Would you still have married me? And? He said yes. Did you believe him? Long pause. I believe he thinks he would have. That was honest. Not naive. Not blind. Measured. And you? I asked. She rested her hand more firmly over her stomach. I'm not deciding based on collapse. Good. I'm deciding based on truth. Even better. A week later, Caleb came inside the house again. Not confident. Not polished. He stood in the living room. Hands empty. No documents. No leverage. I miscalculated, he said quietly. Yes. I thought I could separate business from personal. You can't. I thought timing would protect us. It didn't. Silence. I thought you were emotional. I wasn't. He nodded. You weren't. Silence settled. He looked at Emily. Then at me. I didn't love Olivia. That's not the point, I said calmly. I know. Then what is the point? That I valued leverage over loyalty. Yes. And I didn't think it would matter. Yes. He exhaled slowly. It mattered. Silence. I can rebuild, he said quietly. Not scale, I replied. Trust. He nodded once. That's harder. Yes. And slower. Yes. He looked at me carefully. Will you block me? No. Why not? Because collapse is lesson enough. Silence. He nodded again. Then turned to Emily. I won't ask you to decide today. Good. That was growth. He left quietly. Not defeated. Not triumphant. Just aware. One afternoon, Emily asked me something unexpected. Do you regret exposing it? No. Even with the collapse? Yes. She nodded slowly. I needed to see. Yes. And Aaron? He needed to feel. Silence. And you? She asked. What about me? Did you need this? I thought about that. The kiss. The envelope. The flash drive. The enforcement. The collapse. Then I said. I needed to know. She nodded. That's different. Yes. The wedding portrait stayed face down for 2 weeks. Then one morning, Emily picked it up. Not to admire. Not to erase. Just to look. She stared at it for a long time. Then she turned it around again. I'm not throwing it away, she said quietly. Good. Because it happened. Yes. And I learned. Yes. She smiled slightly. 42 minutes before vows. Yes. That's how long it takes to see clearly. Silence. Then she added softly. Next time, I'll look sooner. Aaron returned to work slowly. Smaller projects. Transparent financing. Public lenders. He didn't speak about scale anymore. He spoke about sustainability. That mattered. Private capital moved on. They always do. Caleb rebuilt quietly. No more strategic intimacy. No more layered opacity. At least not publicly. Time would test that. But for now. He was learning something expensive. Trust takes longer to build than leverage. One evening, months later, I sat alone in the living room. The house was quiet. Peaceful. Emily was upstairs reading. Aaron had stopped by earlier and fixed the back gate. Caleb was rebuilding something smaller. Westbrook was a memory. Collapsed. Absorbed. Repositioned. And I thought about that phone call. 3 weeks after the wedding. "Sir, you need to see this alone." He was right. Because sometimes you need to see clearly before you can move correctly. I stood up and walked to the hallway. The wedding portrait was back on the wall. Not because everything was perfect. But because everything was visible. I looked at Caleb's hand at Emily's back. I looked at her smile. I looked at the vows frozen in time. And I understood something simple. Scale collapses. Leverage evaporates. Structures fail. But integrity. Integrity doesn't scale. It anchors. And that's what remained. If you've ever been underestimated because you're quiet. Because you're older. Because you don't shout your position. Remember this. Quiet doesn't mean weak. It means selective. And when selective people finally move, they don't shout. They expose. And exposure changes everything. It was early spring when I noticed the first real change. Not in Caleb. Not in Aaron. Not even in Emily. In the house. The air felt different. Lighter. Not because nothing had happened. But because everything had. Collapse leaves silence behind. And silence, if you let it, becomes clarity. Emily was 7 months along by then. She moved slower. Spoke softer. Listened more carefully. One morning she stood at the kitchen sink, sunlight catching the side of her face, and said something that stayed with me. "Dad. I'm grateful." "For what?" I asked. "For seeing." I didn't answer immediately. She turned and leaned back against the counter. "I didn't see it," she continued. "I saw the charm. The ambition. The house. The future." "That's not blindness," I said quietly. "That's trust." She nodded. "I don't regret trusting." "Good. I regret not asking." There it was. Not guilt. Not shame. Growth. Aaron stopped using the word scale. He spoke differently now. Slower. Measured. He'd sold his stake in 2 side ventures to cover exposure. He never complained. Never blamed. He absorbed. One evening, while we were fixing a loose hinge on the back fence, he said something quietly. "I built Westbrook to prove something." "What?" "That I could go bigger than you." I didn't react. "I thought if I built something visible, something large, you'd see I wasn't just your son." Silence. "I always saw you," I said calmly. He nodded. "I know that now." That was enough. Caleb visited regularly. Not to persuade. Not to pitch. To participate. He fixed a loose cabinet. He mowed the lawn without being asked. He attended prenatal appointments. He didn't mention trusts. He didn't mention consolidation. He didn't mention growth. And one afternoon, while standing in the driveway, he said something that felt real. "I confused confidence with control." Yes. And I confused ambition with worth. Yes. He looked down for a moment. "I thought if I moved fast enough, scaled big enough, nobody would question me." They did. Yes. And I deserved it. That mattered. Because recognition isn't collapse. It's reconstruction. The baby arrived in late May. A girl. 8 pounds, 2 ounces. Strong lungs. Stronger grip. When they placed her in my arms for the first time, I felt something shift that no collapse could touch. She blinked slowly. Quiet. Observing. Selective. I almost laughed. She's already watching the board, I whispered. Emily smiled weakly from the hospital bed. She gets that from you. Maybe. Or maybe she gets it from everyone. Because sometimes collapse becomes inheritance. Not in money. But in awareness. A week later, we gathered in the living room. Aaron on one side. Caleb on the other. Emily in the center holding her daughter. The wedding portrait hung quietly on the wall. Not triumphant. Not ironic. Just present. Caleb stood and walked toward it. He didn't take it down. He didn't turn it over. He just looked at it. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I loved her then. Emily didn't speak. And I love her now. She held his gaze. That's the only part that matters moving forward. Moving forward. Not forgetting. Not erasing. Forward. Later that night, when everyone had left, I sat alone in the kitchen. The house hummed softly. The baby monitor glowed faintly upstairs. And I thought about that first phone call. 3 weeks after the wedding. A whisper. Sir, you need to see this alone. He was right. Some truths are seen alone. But they're never carried alone for long. Because once exposed, truth changes the room. I walked down the hallway and paused beneath the portrait again. 42 minutes before vows. 42 minutes before collapse. 42 minutes before clarity. If I had ignored the call. If I had chosen comfort over exposure. If I had signed the trust without question. The house might not be standing the same way now. Not physically. But structurally. And that's what this was always about. Not betrayal. Not scale. Not leverage. Structure. Family is a structure. And if the foundation isn't honest, it fails. Quietly at first. Then all at once. If you're watching this and you've ever felt underestimated. If someone assumed your silence meant weakness. If someone thought you wouldn't look deeper. Remember something simple. The quiet ones aren't passive. They're observing. And when they finally move. It isn't loud. It's precise. And precision changes everything. Thank you for watching.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments how it made you feel. I'll see you in the next one.